All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Tennis Channel Inside In on the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Mitch Michals from the Santa Monica studios, reminding you that this show is on all your podcast platforms. So go to Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your shows to download and listen to this. Another outstanding episode this week, talking to a professional player who's taken the road less traveled. He's 25 years old, an Australian who graduated from the University of Tennessee, was a national champion in doubles, then decided to dedicate himself to the pro game against all odds, broke into the top 100, has played in a couple main draws in majors recently, and is just scratching the surface on his pro potential. Welcome to the show, Adam Walton. Adam, exciting to talk with you here.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me on. Excited to have a chat.
So you're calling in from the Netherlands, and we talked about it before. The grind just doesn't stop. I want to ask you, how's it going over there? And are you at this point used to just always being on the road and always just chasing this tennis dream?
Yeah, I'm used to a lot of weeks on the road now. But it's quite cold actually over here in Europe. I've been in Europe for 3 weeks, and it's been jumpers and hoodies for 3 weeks straight. So it's been cold.
Do you have, and I guess this is an open-ended question, but when you're on a match week and getting ready to play and then getting ready to travel, are you locked into your routine? Like, do you have a daily? I know it differs from match days to practice days, but do you have a pretty set routine wherever you go?
No, I'm actually pretty flexible. I was probably last year perhaps a little bit more routine based, but there's just so many variables like that. I think it's probably best just to be a bit more flexible, and because a lot of things are out of your control, and if you start being too superstitious about certain things, and I just think it causes more harm than good. So no, I'm pretty laid back. If we need to go to different places to eat, different times to hit, etc., it's okay. I don't mind the variability of it all.
That's good. I do hope you realize you're rare in that regard. Like a lot of tennis players I've gotten to talk to are just so set, and athletes in general are just setting their routines.
Yeah, no, for sure. You can see it all the time that players have their set mind. I definitely have my set ways on the tennis court when I'm playing a match, but just all the outside stuff, I've tried to be pretty flexible as much as I can.
So I want to go to your backstory. You grew up in Australia and then came to college at Tennessee. You decided to come over to the States to play. But growing up in Australia, and if I have this right, you learned the game at a racetrack because they actually had tennis courts inside of racetracks. Is that where you first kind of discovered it?
Yeah, so I'm actually from a small town in Australia called Home Hill, and there was 12 public courts actually inside the local racetrack there, and I thought it was pretty normal when I was growing up to, we'd have to wait for the horses to go by before you could open the gates to get in to go have a hit of tennis. But you learn it's quite unique, and there's not many tennis courts that are actually situated inside a racetrack. And it's pretty. I have very fond memories of hitting at Home Hill.
So I know you followed your older brother Jack and really, emulated him like a lot of younger brothers do, but also reading up on you, you played other sports, maybe not traditional in the States, but you were cricket and rugby. I want to ask why tennis was the one that stick. Was it just something you were really good at, or was there a different thing about the game that appealed to you?
It was honestly more my brother. He was the one that sort of chose tennis. I was kind of happy to go with the flow, and I just, he was a year and a half older, so I always just tried to copy him in every regard, and he was a lot better than me at every sport that we played. Just he was a bit bigger and just a little bit more developed, and he ultimately wanted to go down the tennis route, and I kind of just followed. And he was a better tennis player than me all the way up until probably 15, 16 years old. So that's probably why I chose tennis, was because of him.
Did you have a lot of heroes growing up? We all know Australia has so many great tennis champions. Did you have heroes, maybe even outside Australia, that you kind of emulated and looked up to?
Not really. I mean, I obviously like watching, Novak, Roger, Rafa, all the big guys play, but I don't really have, a favorite. There's a lot of cool sports stars that I look up to in all sports. But I don't really have one in particular.
It definitely seems like, and you could correct me here, but Australia has a structure that's very, good for tennis and development. And it even is lending itself to the college states. Do you find that, or did you find that growing up in Australia, that there was some structure there to developing tennis players and ultimately, putting them on the right path to maybe get to college or beyond to the pros?
Yeah, there's a great structure within the Tennis Australia program, but obviously being brought up in Home Hill, Australia, there's it's a town of about 2,000 people. There's not a lot much going on there, so me and my brother, we went down to Brisbane, and where we could get a little bit better schooling, and tennis was a little bit stronger there. So you kind of have to move to the cities that where it's available. But then, yes, once you're situated into the programs, for sure they do a great job.
So we'll get into the Tennessee part of things, and I'm very curious with this. I think a lot of the listeners are as well. How does college tennis come on the radar of somebody not from America? Is it a development thing? Did you find that you needed, or did you think that you needed more time to kind of grow up and develop on your game and get used to living on the road? How does college become on the path of a young Australian like yourself?
Yeah, I think it's changed nowadays to when I was looking back in 2017, but unfortunately, I didn't think the way Australians viewed college tennis was too good back in when I was deciding to go to college. They almost thought it was a means to an end, and there wasn't so many great examples, I guess, that have come out of college back then. And it wasn't a path that was really talked about in Australia. But I had some friends that went over to the US college system, and that all said so many great things, and I just took a chance. I wasn't ready to play pro tennis, and I wasn't ready to give up tennis. So I thought, what better way than to get the best of both worlds, and take a chance to go to the United States and play college tennis.
So what was it like in Knoxville, Tennessee? Because there's culture shocks, and being a local from the States and knowing people from Tennessee, I got to imagine that's a pretty big culture shock for you.
Yeah, they do things for sure differently, but a lot is the same. Like, at least the English barrier was never something I had to deal with, because Australia and America both speak the same language. The food, I think, is very westernized in both countries. There is actually a lot of similar things. Just there's I actually remember the first couple of classes that I took, the way that they taught, I guess, was different to how I'd learned in high school. I remember doing just simple mathematics, and there was different terminology that was used, and so you had to be adjustable to learning their way of things. And just coming from Australia, obviously we learn differently.
Yeah, and I'm sure your first taste of SEC football was a little jarring too. How serious it is.
Obviously, I went in the fall, and so you come straight into the football season, and that was a big take back to see how much the community rallied around a college football team, because that just doesn't happen in Australia. And I loved football games. I went to as many as I could go to. If I was in Knoxville, I was there, and sometimes we were having to play tennis tournaments.
Right.
But if we were in Knoxville, the whole team was there.
One of the things that was said recently at Roland Garros by Ben Shelton, someone that you humble brag, have a victory over. But Ben Shelton said in Paris that, beating the local French player in his first round match, that it's very similar to the SEC crowds, these college tennis crowds. Do you think that, do you think that prepared yourself for the pro game, playing in some of these rowdy, downright, raucous SEC tennis environments?
Yeah, it prepares you when you get to play, at levels where crowds are actually involved. I mean, obviously, I started out in the pros where, in the future level, barely anyone is watching, and even in some challenges, crowds are quite minimal. But obviously, when you get to play in hostile environments, I played in a really cool environment this year at Australian Open. And then, obviously, when I played at the French Open, I played a Frenchie, and it was all against me. And so I guess, them situations I'd taken from college, where you have such a, at home, we had such great support. And then when you're on the road, especially like, for example, the University of Georgia, you get heckled pretty badly there. And I guess that was kind of similar to, how it was in Paris.
Yeah, Georgia's on the list too. Although Shelton did say Florida fans were more respectful. I don't know if you want to rebuttal that.
No, I'll probably actually agree with that. I thought Athens was always a tough place to play.
Okay. Yeah, I just think it's good to kind of have that character and know how to play in a road game. It doesn't happen much, but as you said, when you're playing these big hostile environments, it's huge.
Yeah.
And then you're in your tennis career too. I mean, I guess it starts with kind of being the like an underdog, underappreciated in a lot of ways, but you get that doubles national championship with Patrick Harper. For a lot of people out there don't realize that you had to work your way into the lineup. So what was that process like for the years of not knowing if you were going to play, but then ultimately finding that partner and then going all the way?
Yeah, obviously, I'd come into college tennis and hadn't had much doubles at all. I didn't really play much before going into into college, much doubles, and it took me a while. My first couple of years in college, I always actually had negative records in doubles, and I wasn't playing line one. And then, yeah, that year in 2021, it was my going into just after COVID, my fourth year. Yeah, Woody, the coach there, just we were actually on a bus traveling to a fall tournament, and he said, "I'm thinking about pairing you with Pat Harper, a good friend of mine from Brisbane as well." And we'd never played together in college. We'd played one tournament in Australia, but other than that, like we hadn't really played together. And yeah, he just took a chance, and we kind of gelled straight from. I think our like off court chemistry for sure helped, and I think he helped my doubles game. We then were playing line one, and I just felt playing better competition. You have to raise your standards as well, and so I think my doubles really improved just playing at a higher level than I had previously. And then yeah, ultimately winning the title at the end of the spring was really cool.
Do you think that doubles, and you are perfect to ask for this, but has it helped your singles game and knowing how to play doubles and then ultimately work on those skills? Have you seen the effects on your singles game as a result of that?
Um, yeah, I like to think it does help. But I also think a lot of the off court, like the training you do for singles, also helps.
Yeah.
I've trained very hard, especially the last 6 months. And so I feel like training can help, but also yeah, I guess you get some match reps, and perhaps you get more repetitions at the net than you would normally.
Right.
So I guess that's where it helps.
I guess looking at your tennis careers, we're about to get into the pro side of things. So, do you consider yourself kind of an underdog going through? I mean, it sounds like you've exceeded, and I mean this obviously respectfully, you've exceeded your potential at every level you've played.
Yeah, even when I started playing pro tennis, I didn't really know how high I could get to. I certainly didn't think at that time, when I had no ranking 2 years ago, that I would be able to get to top 100. But I was able to get to top 500 pretty quickly, just going through the futures. I knew just off the bat, like my level was going to be able to hold up at future level. Didn't really know much beyond that, and then I guess just with exposure to the level and with a bit of hard work, I've been able to establish myself at the challenger level in the middle of last year, just winning some matches there, and then ultimately winning one at the end of the year, and then yeah, I guess this year I've been really consistent at the challenger level, and so obviously it's another step up when I'm trying to play on the ATP tour. I've noticed that the level is significantly higher than the challengers, and so that's what I'm kind of adjusting to right now.
Yeah, and tennis is an interesting sport, right? Because you have these players that played college tennis, for example, and they might not have been stars. They might not have even been singles players or top singles players. But we've seen it with guys like Kevin Anderson, girls like Jennifer Brady that have gone on to major finals and maybe were late bloomers. So the college experience kind of helps that, but there's still so much development that goes into your game that you're going to keep getting better after college.
Yeah, I mean, I went into college. I played line four for a school that was 44 in the country, and then just every year in college, I just got a little bit better, played a little higher in the lineup, was able to play, line one my last 2 years in college tennis, and our team was, top five in the country. Like we'd really improved, and then I feel the same in my pro career in the 2 years. I've just gotten a little bit better as time's gone on, and I still think that my ceiling is in the future. Like I still think that I'm improving, and I can still, improve and hopefully climb up the ranks even higher.
More with Adam Walton here on Tennis Channel Inside In, talking to the young Australian tennis player about his career, his journey, and where he took his game to new heights. So you graduate from Tennessee in 2022. Again, no ranking, starting from scratch. Did you have a concrete plan or maybe like a time frame? Like, okay, I'm going to give it a go for this. Talk me through the early stages of your tennis career at the pro level.
Well, it was quite funny. In April, I was chatting to Woody whether I should actually go and play pro tennis. And this is a month before I'm about to graduate or finish college tennis. I'm like, should I keep going? Should I have a go? Should I have a go? And he's like, if you don't at least try, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. You've played this sport for so long. Just give it a couple of months. And so I was like, all right, I'll give it the summer. I'll see how I go. And then, I was able to win the second event I ever got. It's actually funny. So the first event I got into was a 15K up in South Bend, Indiana. I was able to qualify and I drew the top seed first round. And I lost that one. And then for the next 2 weeks, I tried signing in. And because I had no ranking, I couldn't get into qualifying a future event. And then it actually happened in Waco, Texas. It was another 15K where I got into qualifying as an alternate, and I ended up winning that draw, which then, because I'd made the final, got me a special exempt into Cancun, Mexico. And so that night I was on a flight to Mexico, never been to Mexico in my life, and played another future there and was able to win that. And obviously having them initial points once they'd hit the rankings, then I was able to get into the draws.
So all it takes is a spark. It's no different than, I guess, people go in the workforce. They just need that opportunity, just get their foot in the door, and that's what you needed.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So at that point, I mean, you sounds like you've had a lot of influences and people outside the court and on the court, but you've been open about what it takes to succeed at the pro level. And the word I keep hearing is aggression. You were more a defensive player, right? You had to learn how to be more aggressive at the pro game. And because these players, Adam, are just so good at their shots and they're going to go for their shots.
Yeah. I think college, I learned to keep the ball in. I've always prided myself on my fitness, and I got really good at just, knuckling down and bringing a consistent level each day to college. And, it was winning me a lot of matches at the collegiate level. And then I thought when I come out to the pros, it was working at the 15Ks, and I was winning some matches there too. But, as I progressed into my ranking kept climbing and starting to play some challenger events, I just knew that the way I was playing probably wasn't going to be sustainable. And yeah, I feel like I've gotten far more aggressive than perhaps I was 2 years ago, 1 year ago. But the exciting thing is, I think I can still, I still need to be more aggressive. It's a tough one. You got to find a fine balance, because one of my best traits is obviously being able to keep the ball in, and so you don't want to take away that ability to keep the ball in, but also you have to iron out your shots and take it, because at this level, you might only get one opportunity, and if you don't take it, you might lose the match.
Did you have any moments or matches early in your career where you're like, whoa, we're in a new level now?
Yeah, when I started going to challenges in March last year, I went to Mexico and I was losing first round, and I was like, I can't compete with these guys. These guys are much better than me. And, there's a saying that, those that say they can and those that say they can't are both probably correct. And it's a bit of that, to be honest. You gotta really believe that you belong. And if you don't really believe, you're going to get eaten up. It's a cruel sport.
How different would you say you are, though, as a player? Like, if you looked at your game from like 3-4 years ago, do you even recognize it? Are you completely different, or is it just incremental changes?
It's incremental. I've watched highlights of my college matches, and I feel I've ironed out my technique a little bit. And so I see some differences within my technique and perhaps the structure of the points. So it is kind of cool to see that, okay, I have progressed from where I was back then.
Yeah. So you go through the futures level, you get to challengers, you start to find it, you win a couple titles, and go into this most recent one in Taipei against Marchenko, the wily veteran. You win in a 3-set thrilling match. There's harder to find more riding on one match. That got you main draw at these slams. It got you the opportunity to break to the top 100. How did you keep your headspace in it? That morning waking up, knowing what was on the line, how were you able to stay calm and ultimately win that match?
Yeah, that was crazy. It wasn't, I don't know if anyone's had that much riding on. It was obviously for top 100. Wimbledon main draw because the cut was happening after that tournament, and another challenger title. So it was all three that I was playing for that match. And if I didn't win that match, I didn't get any of them three boxes ticked. So it was obviously a stressful night the night before. But I talked to the tennis psychologist at Tennis Australia, and we went through how to stay calm during the match and focus on focus on the match as much as possible, rather than the outcome. And the first set didn't go so well. He was playing very good level, and I couldn't keep up with him. And then I wasn't going to fold. I just told myself just to keep competing, and managed to sort of turn things around in the second set. And then the third set was it was a battle. It was a coin flip, and obviously I was as it was getting deeper in the third set, I was you have some thoughts start to creep into your head like, can you do it? Can you do it? And then, we got to a tie break, and I remember I just played a really disciplined tie break, and he missed a couple of shots by very close margins. And when I remember when I won that, when he hit that final ball out, it's probably the most satisfying feeling I've ever had on a tennis court thus far.
Yeah, it was a tremendous accomplishment, and it seemed like you gave your all to that match, and it was the emotional release there, much deserved. That keep competing thing you brought up, it really does separate a lot of the top players. How many times have we seen the very best in the sport not have it early, get blitzed, and just staying in the fight? And that's, I think, a lesson that all tennis players strive to get to, is even if you don't have it early, just stay in the fight, and you never know how a match can progress.
Yeah, for sure. And to that point, even just being able to back up your level week after week is a lot of players struggle with. There's a lot of talented tennis players up there that you go, how are they ranked where they are? They should be far higher in the rankings, and it's a little bit due to their mental capacity. Like, they can't bring that level week in, week out. They can't perhaps find ways when they're down in a tennis match, but yet their actual tennis skills are very, very high.
You mentioned speaking to the Tennis Australia psychologist, powers of technology, right? You can FaceTime people now to kind of get some quick advice. But how has that process helped your game, and how valuable is it to have that resource, that lifeline at your disposal?
Yeah, I think it helps as much as you think it'll help you. If you don't buy in, I think it's a waste of time. So you really have to buy in, and he's got some he's very good with choosing his words, and I just find a few sentences he says, I just try to find them that stick in my head. And then when I'm out on the tennis court, in the back of your head, you've done the work with him, and you've gone over through some breathing patterns and some other things to keep you calm while the tennis match is going on. And sometimes that may be the difference. I don't know. I just think it's better to be prepared than not be prepared.
Yeah, and I would imagine too, a tennis player's one of the hardest things, because you play so much and you play for stakes all the time, but it's tournament to tournament. There's only one winner. How you're able to handle the emotional lows, a lot of them, but also the highs. You win that tournament, you get there. How do you keep going, and how do you deal with the emotional drain that tennis takes out of you?
Yeah, you can go from hero to zero pretty quickly, but like also the vice versa. There's obviously a saying that goes in tennis that winning is contagious, but so is losing. And, unfortunately, when you have a few losses in a row, you perhaps become a bit more desperate on the court to try get that winning feeling again. But when it's winning, everything's flowing, your game, you feel good about your game. You don't even have to think. It's almost just like it's cognitive just happening, and everything's going so great. And, I'm still learning how to deal with it, but I do feel like I'm a good loser. And when I do lose, which is, it's very hard to win. It's only one person wins a tournament each week. So, 99% of the draw loses. I feel like I'm pretty good with my losses, and it's straight back to work and try to prepare for the next one.
As someone that's played, I think this is accurate as of today, the most challenger matches, you're over like 80 in the last 12 months. You've got, I think, the most wins, over 50. So you've really outworked the competition to get here. But how do you manage fatigue and trying not to go too hard and giving your body enough time to recover?
I still trying to figure it out. Physical fatigue, I feel like my body holds up well. It's just maybe perhaps, mental fatigue, when to take some time off. I'm still learning the best method, but I do think one of my best traits is being able to keep a consistent level for a lot of weeks of the year. And, I think that's a big part of why I was able to get, to the top 100.
Certainly seems to be that way. Wrapping up here with Adam Walton on Tennis Channel Inside In. A couple more things before we let you get out of here. A man that has a lot of tennis to keep playing this year and beyond. Going forward and kind of looking at some of the areas of your game, we mentioned ways to get better, how you can get better, and the fact that you set goals, I think, Adam, at a reasonable pace. What's the next iteration of your career look like? You're into main draws now. You're playing, in some ATP matches and some locker rooms. What's the next step of your career and your development look like?
I'd obviously like to win a Grand Slam match. I've had 2 chances, and unfortunately I've lost both. So that would obviously be a dream, to just be able to win a Grand Slam match. I feel like it doesn't really matter where. I just think it would be a cool thing to say you've done. And then just keep ironing out my tennis and just try and improve a little bit each day. And I feel like if I keep improving, then hopefully the ranking keeps improving too. So I don't have too many result-based goals, but obviously there's a lot of process goals that I have that will hopefully help to reach higher ranking.
Smart approach to do that, not basing on results, working on the process, and it's suited you well so far. So we do hope you keep going on. 2 quick hitters and lighter ones before we wrap up. One being, what are the interests that you do to pass the time on the road? Tennis players, maybe a gamer, or do you read? I don't know what your hobbies are.
Yeah, definitely. I don't play console games, but I do play a few on my phone. I like to play cards a lot on the road with other Australians. I like to, go to restaurants and chat absolute rubbish to them. We always talk a lot of rubbish, just because it's the Australian way. Don't really watch many movies, so I guess just play cards and talk. I hate being in the room alone. So I always like to be around people.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. And cards, it's an old school move. I like it. Last thing, is there any achievement you've had better in your life outside of tennis than that hole-in-one on the Williams Creek golf course in Tennessee?
I don't know. I think that was a special moment. I remember hitting that shot, and I genuinely couldn't believe that I'd pulled it off. And no, I'm going to say no. I to this day, other than tennis, my best achievement is probably that hole-in-one.
Was anybody else on the course?
Yeah, we were with our every Friday in the fall. Most Fridays in the fall, our assistant coach would rally up the whole team, and he'd put us in groups of 3, and our whole team would go out and play golf. There'd be 4 or 5 groups. And so I was in a group of 3, and my 2 other teammates saw me hit it, and the rest of the course heard me hit it, because we celebrated.
Heard the reaction. Yeah. That's what I was getting at. Is who would have been there and heard the reaction, or thought there was an earthquake or something.
Yeah.
Well, Adam Walton, this was a pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to do the podcast, coming on Tennis Channel Inside In. Best of luck with everything in your pro career. And just want to say you're setting an example for people that might not have been highly touted coming into the pro game and just finding a path to success. So thanks for coming on the show. Much appreciated. Hope to catch up again in the future.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me on.